The silence in the 30th floor penthouse had a different texture on that Tuesday night. 1 year had passed since we returned from the fish market, and the apartment, once a cold glass mausoleum, now breathed with the organized mess of our shared life. My architecture books scattered on the Persian rug, the smell of rosemary from the dinner I was preparing, and a soft jazz playlist playing in the background. But Caroline was acting strange. For weeks, I had noticed a subtle shift in her frequency. She would come home from work, and instead of relaxing, lock herself in the office with a stack of documents she hid as soon as I entered. I knew that rigid posture, that furrow of worry between her eyebrows. It was the posture of someone calculating risks for a hostile takeover or mass layoffs. I turned off the stove under the risotto and walked to the office door, determined to confront the ghost that was haunting our peace. I found Caroline sitting in the leather armchair, holding a blue folder so tightly that her knuckles were white. She didn't see me enter, her gaze lost somewhere in the blind spot of the dark Seattle skyline, reflecting a loneliness that froze my spine. "What is going on, Carol?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. "Is it Uncle Arthur? Is the company in trouble? You are analyzing those papers as if they were a death sentence." Caroline jumped, closing the folder abruptly on her lap. She tried to smile, that corporate smile she used to disarm investors, but it faltered and died on her lips. "It is not the company, Luna. Alcantara construction has never been better." She sighed, taking off her reading glasses and rubbing her face with a tiredness that seemed to come from her soul. "Sit here. I did a feasibility analysis, studied the statistics, but this is the only negotiation I don't know how to start." I sat on the arm of the chair, fear beginning to tighten my chest. She handed me the folder. When I opened it, I didn't find financial balance sheets or legal lawsuits. I found medical articles about late pregnancy, fertility rates, genetic risks, and brochures from assisted reproduction clinics. I looked at her, stunned, and saw the most powerful woman I knew shrunk in the chair, vulnerable as a child. "I am going to be 40 in 3 months, Luna," she said, her voice low and controlled, trying to keep logic where there was only emotion. 40 years old. I spent the first half of my life building concrete skyscrapers, accumulating wealth, proving to my father and that board of old men that I was capable. I won every battle. But look around. I have a glass empire, and no one to inherit the throne. "You want to have a child?" I asked, feeling my heart race, a mixture of shock and sudden joy trying to explode. "I want to leave a legacy that isn't cold," she corrected, holding my hand. But I looked at the numbers. My body has spent decades under stress, cortisol, and neglect. A pregnancy at my age is an extremely high risk, and I'm terrified, Luna. Terrified of failing. Terrified of not having energy. Terrified of being too old to run in a park. She paused, and I saw shame color her pale cheeks. That is why I took so long to speak, because the logical conclusion, the only safe variable in this equation, is you. She looked at me with a silent plea, her eyes watering. "I am asking you the most selfish thing in the world. I am asking to use your youth, your vitality, your body, because mine no longer serves to generate the life I want so much. I want us to have a child, but I need you to be his shelter, because I can only guarantee safety from the outside." The Iron Lady had completely disappeared. What I saw before me was a wounded lioness, conscious of her scars, trying to protect the future the only way she knew how, with strategy and caution. She wasn't proposing a romantic dream. She was presenting me with a survival plan for our love. I slid from the arm of the chair into her lap, hugging her tightly, feeling her body tremble against mine. "It is not selfishness, Carol," I whispered against her neck. "It is partnership. You build the walls, I build the nest. If your body is tired of fighting corporate wars, Mine is ready for this. Caroline buried her face in my shoulder and cried. A contained cry of relief, of someone who had spent weeks holding the weight of the world and time alone. I will protect you both, she promised, her choked voice gaining a new, fierce firmness. I may not be able to carry, but I swear by everything that is most sacred that nothing and no one will ever touch you. I will build a world where this child never feels the cold that I felt. That night, surrounded by papers and statistics, we didn't make love. We stayed embraced in the office, outlining the most ambitious project of our lives, aware that, for the first time, Caroline wasn't playing for profit, but playing against time to love. The waiting room of the assisted reproduction clinic had the same polar temperature and the same aseptic lighting as the construction firm's conference rooms, a white and chrome environment designed to convey efficiency and eliminate bacteria, but which ended up eliminating any trace of human warmth too. For Caroline, this was familiar territory. She understood the language of sterility and control. Sitting in the futuristic design armchair, she held a tablet with one hand and mine with the other, but while my fingers were hot and sweaty with anxiety, hers were cold and firm, squeezing my skin in an unconscious rhythm. When Dr. Vance called us, Caroline entered the office not as a future mother, but as a CEO about to close a high-risk merger. She placed the tablet on the doctor's desk before even saying good morning, opening color-coded spreadsheets she had compiled herself during the night. Doctor, I analyzed the success rates of the last 5 years of the clinic, compared to the national average, she began. Posture erect, voice projected. You have a variation of 2% in intrauterine insemination cases for women of Luna's age. I want to understand what control variables you utilize in the lab to mitigate implantation failures, and what the contingency protocol is in case the first attempt doesn't thrive. The doctor, a gray-haired gentleman with a patient look, blinked a few times, surprised by the technical artillery. I squeezed Caroline's thigh gently under the table, trying to bring her back to earth. Love. Let him explain the process first, I whispered. Caroline turned to me, and for a second, the mask of efficiency fell, revealing absolute panic in her eyes. I need to know if it is safe, Luna. I need to be sure we are minimizing all margins of error. This isn't an architectural project where if a wall is crooked, we tear it down and do it again. It is a life. The appointment followed in an emotional tug-of-war. Caroline intellectualized every step, questioning genetics, motility, statistics of hereditary diseases, treating biology like an exact science that could be mastered if she was smart enough. I, on the other hand, barely heard the technical terms. My eyes were fixed on the computer screen where the doctor showed the process, imagining that, soon, there would be a heart beating inside me. The critical moment came with the choice of the donor. The doctor handed us a digital catalog, a menu of souls of anonymous men, described by physical and intellectual characteristics. Caroline took control immediately, filtering candidates with the rigidity of someone hiring a financial director. Candidate 402, discarded. History of diabetes in the family. Candidate 518, master's degree in physics. Excellent. But the file says he has a predisposition to heart problems. I won't risk it. She scrolled through profiles, quickly, seeking unattainable genetic perfection. Luna, what do you think of 620? IQ above average athlete, no history of serious diseases in 3 generations. It is the safest phenotype. I looked at the cold technical sheet she pointed to. It was a set of data, not a person. I took the tablet from her hand gently and scrolled down, where there was a small handwritten letter by the donor and a photo of him as a child. Look at this, Carol. I pointed to the photo of a boy missing a front tooth, smiling while hugging a dog. He says he decided to donate because his sister needed help getting pregnant, and he saw the happiness it brought. He likes music, and says his biggest flaw is laughing too loud. Caroline frowned, confused. But what about the genetics? And the academic history? Laughing too loud doesn't guarantee professional success or health, Luna. No, I agreed, holding her face so she would stop looking at the screen and look at me. But it guarantees he will be a happy child. You are trying to design a perfect human being, Carol, as if it were an earthquake-proof building. But we don't want a robot. We want a son. And children come with flaws, with quirks, with unforeseen events. Caroline let out a breath, her shoulders dropping. She looked at the photo of the smiling boy, and then at my still flat stomach. I just wanted to give him the best possible chances, because I feel I am already starting at a disadvantage by being older, by being full of trauma. I wanted genetics to compensate for my failures. The doctor watched us in silence, respectful. Biology isn't engineering, Caroline, I said softly. Love is the only variable we really control. Let science do its part, and let us do ours, which is to give warmth. Caroline was silent for a long minute, her analytical mind fighting against her heart. Slowly, her hand abandoned the rigid posture on the table and slipped to cover my hand that was over my womb. Her touch was starting to warm up. Laughing too loud, she murmured, a half-smile emerging, watery eyes fixed on the photo. Yeah, maybe this house needs someone who laughs loudly. The silence has lasted too long. She looked at the doctor and nodded, the decision made not by the spreadsheet, but by the intuition she so feared using. We will take 620, doctor. And, please. Her voice failed, losing the authority of a CEO and sounding just like a terrified future mother. Take good care of my wife. She is the most important part of this project. We left the clinic holding hands, and for the first time, Caroline didn't run to the car to check emails. She walked slowly by my side, adjusting her pace to mine, as if I were already carrying something precious and fragile, initiating there, on the busy sidewalk, her vigil as a protective lioness. The 2 weeks that followed the insemination were, without a doubt, the longest period of my life. A temporal limbo where every minute dragged with the weight of an hour. If the clinic was cold, Caroline tried to transform our apartment into a sterile extension of it. The Iron Lady had given way to the risk manager, and my belly, still empty of certainties, had become the construction firm's most valuable and monitored project. Caroline developed a silent and suffocating obsession. She woke up before me to check the room temperature, adjusting the air conditioning to the 73 degrees ideal, recommended by some obscure study she had read in the middle of the night. She replaced our entire food stock, swapping my chocolate and coffee for undrinkable green juices and organic grains that cost a fortune. On a Tuesday night, the tension finally snapped. I was in the kitchen, stretching my arm to grab a plate on the highest shelf, when Caroline dropped her laptop in the living room and ran to me with the urgency of someone seeing a person about to jump off a cliff. "What are you doing?" she shot out, holding my waist and stopping me from standing on my tiptoes. "Luna, stretching your body like that can cause abdominal tension. Did you read the recommendations for restricted activity?" I let go of the plate on the counter with a louder clatter than intended, feeling irritation bubble up. "Caroline, I am grabbing a plate, not lifting a bag of cement." I turned to her, crossing my arms. "You need to stop. You are treating me like I am a crystal incubator about to break. I am not sick. I am trying to get pregnant. And all this stress you are creating is worse than any heavy plate." Caroline recoiled, hurt, her defensive posture falling. She leaned her hands on the marble island, lowering her head. "I can't control what is happening in there, Luna," she confessed, her voice failing. "In the company, if a pillar is weak, I reinforce it. If the budget tightens, I cut costs. I have control. But here, it is biology. It is chance. And what if it doesn't work? What if it is my fault for not taking care of you properly? I wake up at dawn to see if you are breathing, because I am terrified that my dream is dying before it even starts." I approached and hugged her, feeling the rigidity of her body melt. "A baby isn't a building, Carol. We don't build with cement and control. We build with hope. You need to trust my body. It knows what to do. The day of the test arrived on a rainy Sunday, typical of Seattle. I woke up at 5 a.m, with a full bladder and my heart in my throat. I looked to the side and saw that Caroline had her eyes closed, but her breathing was too rhythmic, too tense. She was awake, pretending to sleep, paralyzed by the fear of the result. I got up without making noise and went to the suite's bathroom, carrying the box of the drugstore test as if it were contraband. I did what had to be done and placed the small plastic stick on the marble sink, sitting on the toilet lid to wait for the 3 longest minutes in the history of humanity. I counted the seconds, listening to the rain hit the window, praying to all the gods I knew and those I didn't. When I finally had the courage to look, the world stopped. 2 lines. Pink. Strong. Indisputable. I opened the bathroom door slowly. Caroline was already sitting on the bed, with disheveled hair and wide eyes, holding the duvet against her chest like a shield. She didn't ask anything. She just looked at my face, trying to decipher the verdict. I walked to her and extended my hand, showing the test. Caroline took the object with trembling delicacy, as if it weighed tons. She looked at the 2 lines, blinked, looked again, and then looked at my belly, still flat under the flannel pajamas. I expected a scream, a jump, a radiant smile. But Caroline just let out a breath, a deep and guttural sound, and covered her face with her hands, starting to cry silently. "Carol," I called, worried, sitting next to her. "Aren't you happy?" She lifted her face, wet with tears, and looked at me with an intensity that frightened me. It wasn't just joy, it was terror. "The project worked," she whispered, voice trembling. "It is real, Luna. There is someone in there." She touched my womb with her fingertips, reverent. "I am happy. My God, I am exploding with happiness. But I have never felt so much fear in my life. Before, it was just an idea. Now we have something to lose. Something irreplaceable." She pulled me into a desperate hug, burying her face in my neck. "I will protect you both," she repeated her mantra, crying copiously. "I will protect you both from everything." In that hug, I realized that motherhood had arrived for Caroline not as a light fairy tale, but as a life or death mission. The lioness had just discovered her cub, and her love, now tangible, was a force of nature as powerful and frightening as the storm outside. Luna's belly began to show in the 4th month, a discreet curve under the loose t-shirts she insisted on wearing to college, but which, for me, was the most imposing monument I had ever seen erected. At Alcantara Construction, life followed the usual frenetic pace, but my mind, once focused exclusively on profit margins and schedules, now shared space with ultrasounds and choosing the color palette for the nursery. I felt invincible, balancing plates I previously judged impossible to carry at the same time. But the calm at the top of the corporate hierarchy is often just the prelude to internal sabotage. On a Thursday afternoon, while I was reviewing the design of a new eco-sustainable condominium, my office door opened without warning. Uncle Arthur entered with that air of false joviality he used to mask his intentions, carrying a leather briefcase and smelling of cigars and anxiety. "Caroline, working hard as always? Or is our president's mind more occupied with diapers than foundations?" He let out a dry laugh, sitting in the chair across from me without being invited. I closed the file on the computer and interlaced my fingers on the desk, assuming my defensive posture. "My mind is multitasking, Arthur. What do you want? Don't tell me you came just to check my productivity." He cleared his throat, adjusting his tie knot with a nervousness that didn't go unnoticed by my radar. "I came to talk business, my dear, and image." He leaned forward, lowering his voice to an annoying conspiratorial tone. "I have been receiving concerns from some more traditional investors, you understand. The German pension fund, the club partners. They are from another generation. This whole modern family story, independent production. This generates noise. The credibility of Alcantara construction has always been based on solidity, on tradition. I felt the blood heat up in my veins, but kept my face impassive. My personal life is not up for debate on the stock market, Arthur. And if the German investors have problems with my family, they can sell their shares. We have a waiting list of buyers. Get straight to the point. Arthur recoiled, realizing the moral attack hadn't worked. He opened the briefcase and slid a stack of papers in my direction. The point is, we need to bolster the cash flow, show financial vigor to stifle any gossip. I brought a unique opportunity, a real estate investment fund in emerging markets in Eastern Europe. Quick return, high leverage. It is the injection of spirit the quarterly balance sheet needs. I already prepared everything. I just need your final signature to release the transfer of the reserve funds. I took the document but didn't read it. I looked at Arthur. He was sweating at the temple, despite the air conditioning being at 64 degrees. His hands trembled slightly, holding the golden pen he offered me. That wasn't the behavior of a partner worried about the company's image. It was the behavior of a desperate man. Emerging markets in Eastern Europe, I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Since when do we operate with speculative venture capital, Arthur? Our policy has always been conservative. Treasury bonds, physical real estate. Why the rush to liquidate the reserve fund? The market has changed, Caroline. He exploded, standing up abruptly and starting to pace the room. We need to be aggressive. You are getting soft, distracted with this pregnancy, with this game of playing house with the intern. While you choose cribs, the market is going to swallow us. Sign this already, and let me save your heritage. Mentioning Luna that way was his fatal mistake. The Iron Lady he thought was asleep woke up instantly, cold and lethal. I pushed the papers back to him, without signing. My distraction is generating record profits, Arthur. And my instinct tells me that the one who needs saving here isn't the company. I stood up, leaning my hands on the desk and staring at him. I am not signing anything. And tomorrow morning I am ordering a complete audit of the financial sector and your movements over the last 12 months. Arthur's face lost color. He opened his mouth to protest, to shout, but saw in my look that there was no room for negotiation. He gathered the papers with trembling hands, mumbling empty threats, and left, slamming the door. As soon as he left, I picked up the phone and called the head of the comptroller's office. Richard, I want to freeze all capital movements signed by Arthur Alcantara. Now. And I want a forensic tracking on every account he touched. I hung up the phone, feeling my heart beat fast. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Uncle Arthur thought my pregnancy would leave me blind. He didn't know that motherhood hadn't made me soft. It had given me a much greater reason to sharpen my claws. He had just messed with my son's heritage, and I wouldn't leave one stone standing on another. It was a Friday night, and the fine rain beat against the penthouse windows, creating a rhythmic soundtrack that normally calmed me. But that night, calm was impossible. I was sitting in the bedroom armchair, laptop open on my lap, but my eyes weren't reading emails. They were fixed on Luna, who was reading a book lying on the bed, one hand resting absent-mindedly on her 5-month belly. The preliminary audit report had arrived an hour ago. I still hadn't found the courage to open the final file, knowing that what I would find there would change my family's history forever. I was delaying the inevitable, protecting that bubble of domestic peace for a few more minutes. Suddenly, Luna let out a sharp gasp and dropped the book, sitting up in bed with wide eyes. "Carol!" she called, her voice loaded with an urgency that made my blood run cold. I dropped the computer on the floor, not caring if it broke, and ran to the bed in 2 seconds, panic already drawing medical emergency scenarios in my mind. What is it? Is it pain? Should we go to the hospital now? I asked, already fumbling for the phone to call the driver. But Luna held my wrist, and when I looked at her face, I didn't see pain. I saw awestruck wonder. "It is not pain," she whispered, taking my trembling hand and guiding it down, pressing my palm against the firm curve of her womb, just below the navel. "Wait. Stay still. Feel it." I stayed motionless, holding my breath, feeling the heat of her skin under my cold hand. For a few seconds, nothing happened, just the soft rhythm of Luna's breathing. I was about to ask what it was when I felt it. It was subtle at first, like a bubble bursting, but right after came a firm movement, a dull thud against my palm, a kick, an unequivocal sign of life, strong, claiming space. I widened my eyes, shocked. The corporate world, Uncle Arthur, the audit, everything disappeared. Only that existed. A tiny and invisible life communicating with me through the skin of the woman I loved. "Did you feel it?" Luna asked, smiling with tears in her eyes. "He is strong," I murmured, voice choked, feeling another movement, this time a slow slide. "My God, Luna. He is real. It is not a project anymore. It is not a blood test. He is there." I leaned my forehead on her belly, closing my eyes, and let the tears I had been holding back all day flow. That kick wasn't just a physical movement. It was a direct hit to my armor. All my coldness, all my cynicism about family and legacy crumbled before the strength of that little being who didn't even have a name yet, but who already owned everything I had. "I promise," I whispered against her skin, making a solemn oath that the baby might be able to hear in the vibration of my voice. "I promise that the world out there can be cruel, can be cold, but in here you will only know warmth. No one will touch you. No one will take what is yours." We stayed there for a long time, connected by that silent miracle, until Luna fell asleep, exhausted by emotion. I covered her carefully, kissed her forehead, and with a heart transformed into tempered steel by love, returned to the armchair and opened the audit file. The tenderness of the previous moment disappeared, replaced by icy fury as I read the pages. It wasn't just incompetence. It was a crime. Arthur hadn't just tried to approve bad investments. He had already drained the company's slush fund. Worse, he had used the construction firm's own shares, my grandfather's legacy, as collateral for loan sharks and second-tier banks to cover gambling debts and failed personal investments overseas. The hole was in the millions. If the creditors executed his debts, a significant part of Alcantara construction would fall into the hands of strangers, of criminals. He had put the roof over my son's, head at risk to save his own skin. I closed the laptop with a soft snap so as not to wake Luna. I looked at her sleeping serenely, protecting our son, and then looked at the reflection of my own face in the dark window. There was no more doubt, nor family pity. Arthur was no longer my uncle. He was a biological threat to my nest. I picked up my phone and typed a message to my personal lawyer, despite it being 3 a.m. Prepare the paperwork for a compulsory buyout and a formal complaint of embezzlement. Call an extraordinary meeting with Arthur for tomorrow at 8 a.m. Just the two of us. He doesn't leave that room until he signs the resignation or leaves in handcuffs. The lioness was awake, and the hunt would end at dawn. The president's conference room had always been my favorite stage. With its 20-foot mahogany table and panoramic view of the city, that was where I performed my role as the untouchable CEO. But on that Saturday morning, the air conditioning seemed colder than usual, and I wasn't there to act. I was there to execute. I arrived at 7 a.m. I dismissed the secretary and the catering service. I wanted the room to be empty, without witnesses to the humiliation or the clemency. I placed only 2 things on the table: a fountain pen and a black folder containing the end of Arthur Alcantara's professional life. When he entered, at 8 o'clock sharp, he brought with him the cloying smell of cologne and that condescending smile he used as armor. "Emergency meeting on a Saturday morning, Caroline?" He threw his briefcase on the table with disdain, sitting to my right, not at the opposite head, in a pathetic attempt to suggest intimacy. I hope it is not another hormonal outburst. The market doesn't stop because you are sensitive. I swiveled my chair slowly to face him. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just slid the black folder across the polished mahogany until it stopped in front of him. Open it, Arthur. His smile faltered for 1,000th of a second, but arrogance spoke louder. He opened the folder with a theatrical sigh of boredom. What is this? More sustainability reports? More. His voice died in his throat. His eyes, previously mocking, fixed on the first page. A copy of $1 million bank transfer from a company account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, dated 2 days prior. He turned the page quickly. A loan agreement with a loan shark fund, holding Alcantara shares as collateral. He turned another. Photos of him leaving an underground casino in Las Vegas. The silence that settled in the room was heavy, dense, suffocating. I could hear his breathing become irregular, the sound of paper trembling in his hands. When he looked up at me, the arrogant uncle had disappeared. Only an old man remained, caught red-handed, afraid. This is an invasion of privacy, he stammered, trying to recover some dignity. You had no right to investigate my personal finances. This is illegal. Illegal is diverting company funds to cover gambling holes, Arthur, I replied, my voice calm, lethally low. Illegal is using the assets my grandfather built, the assets that belong to my son, as collateral for criminals. You didn't just steal from the company. You tried to steal my family's future. He tried to stand up, face red with anger and shame. You don't understand. It was a tight spot. I was going to pay it back. The fund in Eastern Europe was going to cover everything, and there is no fund in Eastern Europe. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot, making him recoil in the chair. Stop lying. It is over. I know everything. I know the interest is eating you alive, and that you have until Monday to pay, or they execute the guarantee and take 15% of the construction firm. I leaned forward, looking deep into his eyes. I am not letting strangers into my company because of your incompetence. Arthur sank into the chair, defeated. He seemed to have shrunk 4 inches. What are you going to do? Call the police? See your uncle leaving in handcuffs on the front page of the newspaper? Do you think that will be good for the image of the company you value so much? No, I replied, pulling a second document from under the table. I am pragmatic, Arthur. Scandals tank stocks. I have a proposal. I pushed the buy-sell agreement toward him. I am buying your share, your 40% of the company. He looked at the value on the last page and let out a hysterical laugh. This is robbery. This value is ridiculous. It is worth 5 times more. It was, I corrected coldly. Before you contaminated the shares with toxic debt. This value is exactly the amount you owe the loan sharks, plus a modest pension so you don't starve in old age. Take it or leave it. If you sign, I liquidate your debts today. You resign from the position for health reasons, and leave here clean, but without power, without shares, and without ever stepping foot in this building again. I paused, letting the weight of the alternative hang in the air. If you don't sign, I leave this room and hand this black folder to the district attorney. You go to prison, lose the shares anyway to the bank, and I watch everything from the front row. Arthur looked at the contract, then at the black folder, and finally at me. He looked for some trace of the niece he used to manipulate, of the girl who sought approval. But he found no one. He found only Leo's mother, the lioness clearing the territory for her cub. With a trembling hand, he took my fountain pen. You are cold, Caroline Alcantara, he murmured, signing his name with anger. Just like your father. No, I replied, collecting the signed contract and putting it in my briefcase. My father would have kept you here to maintain appearances. I am cutting you out to save the essence. He stood up, defeated, took his empty briefcase, and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked back one last time, seeing me sitting at the head of the table, alone and absolute. "Goodbye, Arthur," I said, without looking at him, already opening my laptop to initiate the bank transfer. The door closed with a soft click. I took a deep breath, feeling the air enter my lungs, clean for the first time in years. The company was mine. The danger had passed. I placed my hand over my womb, still flat, but full of promises. "It is done, son," I whispered to the empty room. "The kingdom is yours." The guest room, which previously served only to accumulate dust and accommodate formal visitors who never showed up, had turned into a construction zone. But, unlike Alcantara construction sites, here there were no hard hats, rigid schedules, or tension. There were only cans of sun-yellow paint opened on the floor, plastic covering the hardwood floor, and a barefoot Caroline, wearing an old t-shirt of mine stained with paint, and holding a screwdriver as if it were the scepter of her new kingdom. I was sitting in the nursing chair we had just unpacked, resting my back, which, at 7 months pregnant, seemed to carry the weight of the world. My belly was a perfect and heavy sphere, and Leo seemed to be tap dancing inside there, agitated by the smell of fresh paint and the laughter echoing in the room. "Love, are you sure there aren't any pieces left over?" I asked, watching Caroline stare at the crib's instruction manual with an expression of deadly concentration, the same one she used to analyze merger contracts. She wiped sweat from her forehead with her forearm, leaving a yellow streak on her pale skin. "Luna, I build 40-story skyscrapers that withstand hurricane winds. I refuse to be defeated by a Swedish crib that comes with an Allen wrench of dubious quality." She huffed, turning a screw with surgical precision. "But yes, the engineering of this side rail is questionable. I am going to reinforce it with an extra latch tomorrow. Leo won't fall out of here even if he is Houdini." I laughed out loud, feeling the baby kick in response. The image of the Iron Lady, the CEO feared by the real estate market, sitting on the floor with crossed legs, fighting with children's furniture, was the most beautiful scene I had ever seen. "You look sexy when you talk about crib structural engineering," I teased. Caroline put down the screwdriver and looked at me. Her smile started in her eyes, descending slowly to her lips, softening the expression lines that the stress with Uncle Arthur had carved in recent weeks. Since she bought his share and kicked him out of the company, it was as if a dam had broken inside her. Caution and fear gave way to absolute surrender to this moment. She got up, wiping her hands on a cloth, and walked to me. She knelt before the armchair, getting level with my belly, and rested her hands and chin there, ignoring the paint on her t-shirt. "Did it turn out okay?" she asked, looking at the yellow walls we painted together earlier, in a mess that resulted in more paint in our hair than on the wall. "It turned out perfect. It looks warm." I ran my fingers through her blonde hair, picking off a flake of dried paint. "Warm," she repeated the word as if savoring it. "You know, Luna, I spent my entire life living in houses that look like display windows. Everything white, gray, glass. I thought that was elegance. That color and mess were signs of lack of control." She closed her eyes, feeling the baby move under her face. But now, looking at this yellow room, I realize I didn't live in a home. I lived in a waiting room. I was waiting for you to arrive to teach me that life has color. I felt a lump in my throat. Caroline's vulnerability, once so rare, was now the language of our love. "You saved us, Carol," I whispered. "You cleared the land, removed the weeds, protected our future. Now we just need to live in it." Caroline lifted her face and kissed me, a slow and lazy kiss, tasting of a fulfilled promise. "Not long now," she said, caressing my womb. 2 months, and then this house is going to turn upside down." "Are you ready for the chaos?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Babies don't come with instruction manuals, nor with Allen wrenches." Caroline laughed, getting up and returning to her battle against the crib, but with a new lightness in her shoulders. I don't need a manual. I have the best partner in the world, and I have a reason to learn. She winked at me. Now let me finish this level 5 containment structure, because my son will only sleep in the very best of real estate safety. I stayed there, watching her build our son's nest, feeling the absolute peace of knowing that, no matter the chaos that would come with motherhood, we had built unbreakable foundations. The yellow room wasn't just a room. It was the final proof that the winter of Caroline's life was over, and summer had arrived to stay. It was exactly 3:17 in the morning on a rainy Tuesday, when the perfectly planned architecture of our life crumbled in the best possible way. I was in a restless sleep, typical of the 9th month, when I felt a sharp pang, as if lightning had struck my lower back and gone down to my womb. I tried to change position, thinking it was just Leo settling in, but then I felt the sheet get wet, a warm and unmistakable humidity. "Carol," I called, my voice coming out in a whisper strangled by the next contraction that was already coming. Caroline woke up instantly, with that reflex of someone who has been sleeping with one eye open for weeks. "What is it? Water? Pain? The baby?" She sat up in bed, turning on the lamp, and saw my contorted expression. Her gaze fell on the wet sheet, and for a second, I saw pure panic paralyze the woman who tore down and erected buildings. The water broke, I confirmed, squeezing her arm hard while the pain radiated. "It is time." Caroline's paralysis lasted half a second. Then, crisis management mode kicked in. She jumped out of bed, grabbed the hospital bag that had been ready by the door for a month, threw a coat over her silk pajamas, and helped me up as if I were made of blown glass. "Breathe, Luna, breathe. The car has gas. The doctor has been notified. The route takes 12 minutes without traffic." She spoke fast, listing facts to anchor her own anxiety while guiding me to the elevator. In the car, rain fell hard, washing the streets of Seattle. Caroline drove the armored SUV with both hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. She, who always drove with aggressive confidence, was now going 25 miles per hour, dodging every puddle as if it were a lunar crater. "Carol, you can speed up a little," I groaned through my teeth, feeling another contraction coming, stronger and longer. "I am not risking hydroplaning with my son on board," she retorted, tense, looking frantically in the mirrors. "Hang on tight, love. We are almost there. I swear." When we arrived at the hospital and I entered the delivery room, the pain had turned into a universe of its own. Everything was white, bright lights and medical voices, but my focus narrowed to a single thing: Caroline's hand holding mine. She was pale, dressed in those blue surgical scrubs that looked ridiculous and adorable on her. I saw terror in her eyes every time I screamed. For a woman used to solving any problem with a check or an order, seeing the person she loved feeling pain she couldn't take away or control was supreme torture. "I can't make it stop, Luna," she whispered, wiping a damp cloth on my forehead, her voice choked with helplessness. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to help." I pulled her face close to mine, in the interval between pains. "Just stay here. Don't let go of my hand. You are my pillar, remember? The lioness." Caroline nodded, swallowing her tears, and assumed her post. In the following hours, she was my anchor. She counted along with me. She gave me water. She fought with the nurse to adjust the air conditioning. She whispered words of love and courage in my ear when I thought I had no more strength. And then, the world stopped. A sharp, strong, indignant cry cut the air of the room, silencing the noise of the rain outside and my own moan. The doctor lifted the small, slippery, red body. "It is a strong boy," he announced. Caroline let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She looked at that tiny being with absolute reverence, as if standing before the greatest work of art in humanity. Tears streamed freely down her face, wetting the surgical mask. "Luna," she cried, looking at me and then at him. He is perfect. When they placed Leo on my chest, his warmth fused to mine. Caroline approached, and the doctor offered the scissors for her to cut the umbilical cord. Her hand, which signed million-dollar contracts without trembling, trembled now, but she made the cut, separating him from me physically so he could belong to the world. She leaned in, kissing my sweaty forehead, and then touching our son's tiny hand with her index finger. Leo closed his fingers around her finger in an immediate reflex, trapping her forever. "Hi, son," she whispered, voice broken by the rawest emotion I had ever witnessed. "I am your mom, and I waited my whole life for you." In that cold hospital room, the Iron Lady died for good, and in her place, a mother was born, bathed in tears and love, holding the greatest asset she would ever have. Leo's first 3 months of life hit our penthouse like a tropical hurricane that wasn't on any weather forecast. If Caroline thought she knew what sleep deprivation was because of business mergers that went through the night, Leo came to redefine the concept of exhaustion. The apartment, once a minimalist temple of design, was now a minefield of colorful toys, cloth diapers, and the smell of milk and powder. The imported glass coffee table, which once served only to support art magazines, now supported a precarious tower of sterilized bottles and pacifiers. On a Sunday afternoon, I entered the living room and stopped, leaning against the doorframe, observing the scene that summarized our new reality. Caroline was walking back and forth with Leo in her arms, wearing sweatpants I didn't even know she owned, and a t-shirt stained with spit up on the shoulder. Her blonde hair, always impeccable, was tied in a loose bun that challenged gravity. "Come on, Mr. Leonardo," she whispered to the baby, who stared at her with big brown eyes, totally awake. "I am proposing a very advantageous agreement. You close those beautiful eyes for 40 minutes, and in exchange, Mommy doesn't collapse from exhaustion, and we maintain the corporate sanity of this family. What do you say? Do we have a deal?" Leo responded with a yawn and a toothless smile that made Caroline melt instantly. "You are a ruthless negotiator, just like your mother Luna," she sighed, kissing his chubby cheek. It was in this moment of domestic chaos that the intercom rang. The doorman announced the visitor Caroline had feared since the day we discovered the pregnancy, Mrs. Helen, her mother. When the elevator door opened, the Alcantara matriarch entered with her usual rigid posture, dressed in a tweed suit and holding a designer bag as if it were a shield. She looked at the messy living room, at the toys on the floor, and finally at her disheveled daughter with the baby in her arms. The silence in the room became tense. I approached Caroline, ready to defend my family if the first criticism was launched. "Hi, Mom," Caroline said, voice tense, holding Leo a little tighter against her chest. "Sorry about the mess. The routine here has changed a bit." Helen didn't answer immediately. She walked slowly to them, eyes fixed on the baby. I saw Caroline's throat work in a dry gulp, waiting for the comment about the lack of etiquette, about the dirty clothes, about the alternative life she led. But Helen stopped a step away and extended her hands, which trembled slightly. "May I?" she asked, her voice coming out in an unrecognizable wisp. Caroline hesitated for a second, exchanging a look with me. I nodded slightly. Caroline transferred Leo to his grandmother's arms carefully. The moment Helen held her grandson, the ice statue I met at the engagement dinner fell apart. She looked at Leo's face and, to our absolute shock, began to cry. Not an elegant cry, but a heartfelt cry of someone carrying ancient regrets. "He has your eyes, Carol," Helen whispered, caressing the baby's little hand. "He is beautiful." She raised her watery eyes to her daughter. "I see you with him. I see how you protect him, how you look at him." Helen took a deep breath, trying to contain the tears. I never knew how to do that. I was taught that loving was providing, that affection spoiled the child. I failed you so much, my daughter. I let you grow up in that cold. Caroline stood paralyzed, tears beginning to run down her own tired face. You are breaking the cycle, Helen continued, returning her gaze to her grandson. You are a much better mother than I ever was. Thank you for letting me be part of this. Thank you for giving me a second chance to see a child grow up with love in this family. Caroline took a step forward, and for the first time in years, hugged her mother. It wasn't a formal Christmas hug. It was a hug of forgiveness, sealed by shared crying and the baby murmuring softly between them, oblivious to the fact that his simple existence was healing wounds of 3 generations. I watched the 3 generations of Alcantaras there, in the middle of my messy living room, and knew that the last shadow hovering over Caroline's life had just dissipated. Uncle Arthur had been expelled, and her mother had been redeemed. The past was resolved. Now, only the future remained. The Orlando sun punished the asphalt of Main Street, and the sweet smell of popcorn and churros saturated the hot Florida air. If someone had told me, 3 years ago, while I was scanning groceries at a supermarket checkout in Seattle, that I would be there, in the happiest place on earth, I would have laughed in scorn. But if someone told me I would be there, accompanied by Caroline Alcantara wearing denim shorts, comfortable sneakers, and a headband with mini ears, I would have committed that person to an asylum. However, there she was. The woman who previously considered a linen suit too casual was now running after a 2-year-old boy who darted toward Cinderella Castle with the energy of a supernova. Leo giggled, his chubby legs running clumsily, pointing at the colorful balloons with pure enchantment. "Leo, slow down. Mickey isn't going to run away," Caroline shouted, laughing, managing to catch him and lifting him into the air. He squealed with joy, grabbing her nose. I walked over to them, feeling my heart overflow. Caroline was sweaty, disheveled, with a vanilla ice cream stain on her t-shirt, and never, in our entire history, had she looked so radiant. She spun Leo in the air and then settled him on her hip, looking at me with a shine in her eyes that rivaled the midday sun. "Can you believe he wanted to wave goodbye to every duck he saw on the way?" she commented, feigning indignation, but with her voice dripping with affection. "If he is like this in board meetings in the future, the company goes bankrupt in a week. He got the friendliness from the mother who carried him, not the coldness of the executive mother," I joked, wiping the ice cream off her t-shirt with a napkin. "And speaking of executive, who are you and what did you do with my wife?" "Denim shorts, Carol? The board of directors would have a collective heart attack right now." Caroline smiled, that easy and light smile she took so long to learn to use. "The executive stayed in Seattle, Luna. Here I am, just Leo's mom and Luna's wife. And honestly, this position pays me much better. The bonus is paid in drooly hugs." Night fell over the park, bringing a light breeze and the electric expectation for the closing show. We found a spot with a view of the castle, surrounded by thousands of people. But, as always happened when we were together, it seemed we existed in a bubble all our own. The park lights went out. The music started playing, a melody that spoke of dreams and wishes made on stars. Leo, already tired from the day's marathon, nestled his head on Caroline's shoulder, fighting sleep to see the lights. When the first rocket went up, streaking the dark sky and exploding in a rain of gold and silver, Caroline's face lit up. She didn't look at the sky. She looked at me. In the reflection of her eyes, I saw the explosions of color, but I also saw our entire journey. I saw the supermarket, the coffee shop, the cold contract on the table, the storm, the fish market, the pregnancy test, the birth. I saw every brick we laid together to build that unlikely happiness. She put her free arm around my waist, pulling me close, gluing our bodies together. "Do you know what I am thinking about?" she whispered in my ear, her voice competing with the boom of the fireworks. "How we are going to carry Leo sleeping to the car," I guessed, laughing. "No," she replied, leaning her forehead on mine. "I am thinking about that paper you signed 3 years ago. That absurd 12-month contract. I felt a shiver down my spine, remembering the fear and uncertainty of that day. What about it? Caroline turned her face to kiss my lips softly, a kiss full of gratitude and infinite peace. It was the best deal I ever closed in my life, Luna. That was the only contract I signed with the ink of my soul. She looked at Leo sleeping in her arms, and then returned to stare at me, with happy tears shining in her eyes. Thank you for not complying with the clause about not falling in love. Thank you for tearing up the rules and teaching me to live. The final fireworks exploded in an apotheosis of light, turning night into day. And there, under the magical sky of Orlando, I kissed my wife and hugged my son, knowing that our story had no expiration date. There were no more clauses, nor renewals, just the three of us, and the happily ever after that we wrote ourselves, day after day. And so ends the unforgettable journey of Luna and Caroline. From a cold contract to a family warmed by true love, they proved that fate writes straight with crooked lines. And sometimes, those lines start at a supermarket checkout. If you were moved by this ending and want to continue following love stories that defy the odds, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Love is the best contract. Your interaction is what keeps these stories alive. Thank you so much for the company, and see you in the next story.